Like you have the central bankers saying that we got to fix inequality, but you were the morons created it in the first place.
Whether it's Fauci admitting in emails that he was aware masks don't work, or admitting he knew gain of function research was going on in China, well, I mean, he should know because he was the one funding it, or whether it was Bitcoin supposedly being hacked by the FBI to recover the pipeline hacker funds, or Janet Yellen going from no inflation to inflation is transitory to inflation is good, seemingly at no time at all. We've got a lot to cover. This is Tim and John Show, episode 41. I'm Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor, joined by the one and only John Snice in the Economic Truth, and of course, Arthur Diamond Hands. So, what we're going to do today is we are going to get right into these articles, trying to actually get out of speaker view over here. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was this Colonial Pipeline hack. So, we're going to go to the article over here from Zero Hedge. The Colonial Pipeline hack, the Russians, and the FBI's ransom grab, what really happened. And the media wants to make it out to believe that the FBI hacked Bitcoin and can just take anyone's funds, when the reality is that they never had the Bitcoin in the first place. And I'm going to put on my conspiracy theorist hat. And honestly, I think this was all some sort of inside job. I think either it was like the FBI doing the whole thing to begin with. And I mean, think about it. Okay, $4 million or 4.5 million. Let's round up to $5 million. What's $5 million to the government? I mean, nothing. I mean, a microsecond, nanosecond of spending. I mean, it's basically nothing, but they were able to accomplish so much. I mean, they're either going to use this to either get some more funding to, bolster more infrastructure spending to the tune of billions of dollars, or they're going to be able to, demonize Bitcoin all in the process of, oh, look at this. We were able to take all these hackers' funds and we're not going to reveal the methodology. And you could tell that these, everything that they're saying is basically written for like 80-year-olds who have no idea how
Yeah.
Bitcoin works.
But
Or people.
I got a thing that somebody said, and I believe that they believe that the private keys came from actually them talking to Coinbase and then asking for this wallet address that they saw stole it. So I don't know,
No
like if
way. It
that's
was that
that's
coin. It was at Coinbase is where they.
well, that's what I heard anyways from it was actually what's his name now? Oh my goodness, I'm terrible with names right now, but it was an alternative media guy that he runs a platform. It's Agoria. What's his name now? Come on, help
Ben
me.
Swan. Ben
Ben
Swan.
Swan, for
Okay.
crying out loud. Yeah. And anyways, he was saying that that there was rumors that have happened, and of course that
I
comes
heard
back
them
to
say it was
like
on a
not your
server in
keys,
Northern
not your wallet.
California. I heard them say it
Yeah.
was on a server in Northern California, and so
Yeah.
is Coinbase. But why? The thing is, if you're some sophisticated hacker and you're going to steal $5 million, you're not going to have like $100 hardware wallet, or you're not going to go,
No,
do
of course.
something,
Yeah.
put it on a
It's
paper
totally
wallet
stupid.
that
Yeah.
doesn't even cost anything. You're going to go and leave it and put it on. I mean, that's like the dumb. It's like stealing a car and then like leaving the keys in the car with the windows down,
Yeah,
and
you would
like,
shuffle the stolen crypto into several wallets or do whatever, right? Like it's obviously like a hacker on that scale. Like how stupid can you
they
be?
were
Like
either
it's
trying
just
to be caught,
yeah,
or this was just all an inside job right from
yeah, it could
right
be.
from the beginning, and there's some backroom deal with Colonial Pipeline going on, or maybe they're just. I mean, I'm not even saying that
What?
Colonial was even in on this. They were just, they've got maybe duped by somebody, but there's absolutely no way that any sophisticated hacker would go and put it on a custodial wallet exchange. I mean, it's laughable. And if you don't know what we're talking about at home, is basically you can either have crypto where it's like you have it, it's safe, secure on your own hardware wallet, or you can have it on an exchange. And so if you were some Russian deep state hacker, you would go and put it on an exchange. No, not any exchange. You'd go put it on an exchange in America that would then have the full force of the FBI to then go subpoena it, and then boom, take your funds in 5 seconds. I mean, this is the most laughable thing ever. I mean, it's like you go and you rob a bank, and then you go like leave an entire trail of like $20 bills back to your house
Ti-
with the door wide open. I mean,
yeah,
because then they're like, oh, they used a block explorer to go and chase this down. I mean, do you know how hard it is to go use a block explorer? You go on DuckDuckGo, you type in block explorer, and then you
mhm,
click on the very first link that's there, and up you've got block explorers. Where let's just go on any
yeah,
transaction. We can go
yeah.
click
There we
on this
go.
one. Oh,
It's like,
there's
oh,
a
that's
wallet
a wallet. Yeah,
address.
yeah.
Oh, there's okay. Let's go click on another address. Go see where all the previous transactions where they have come in. Oh, here's some inputs. I mean, it's the whole thing. You can see, all the transactions that ever
Yeah.
happened from one wallet. I mean, this is so unbelievable, cartoonish, amateur propaganda that it's not even. I mean, it's just a complete bastardization of
Yeah.
Bitcoin to basically idiots that know nothing about Bitcoin. Oh, see, look, I told you Bitcoin could be hacked. It was only a matter of time before it was hacked, when that was not
Well,
the
you
case.
know what? You know what this smells of, Tim? It smells of the World Economic Forum. Remember, they warned about a hack, like all this computer virus that's going to take off. Like it should, like they put this out, and it's a video actually of it, saying that this is the new danger of the world, like a computer virus that will be even worse than COVID, and so on. And it looks like we have the disposed, attacks starting to happen, and they're starting to like get that into the news cycle. There was another meat packing plant that got attacked. But what's interesting is,
What's interesting is that both of these happened the two times I've taken my RV out. So both times that I've gone on my two inaugural trips and I've been off grid, there's been some sort of like hack on the grid. So
yeah.
maybe it's me from the middle of the wood. So it's like both
Well, so
times I don't have the
okay,
internet and I'm cut off from the world, that both of these hacks have occurred. So
so actually talking about being off the grid, that's a perfect segue into what I wanted to say after that. Actually, if you want to have a vulnerable infrastructure like a water plant, or you want to have a energy nuclear plant, or anything that produces energy, or anything that that are of critical infrastructure and that are vulnerable, why the hell are you putting it with access to the internet? Why aren't you building, like, I'm a
air
telecom
gaps.
technician. I could build you a system that would never be on the internet by just using the same infrastructure, but you would never hook it up to the internet. Like, why the heck are you morons, like, hooking it up to the internet? Why are you not running your own? Like, a lot of hydro companies run their own fiber lines. Why are they using that without an internet connection? Don't have your stupid employees wanting to have Facebook, so that way you have to have it hooked up, and that's how they get in. It's a simple, like, it's a simple, when I deal with routers, I just go up and look like, okay, I gotta try to get into this router. What is the standard password and usernames? And then you find them, and a lot of times they're never been protected, right? Like, it's very simple. Solar Wind, that hack was like a stupid, basic password that was never changed. So again, you could
Or
easily
like John
protect your
Podesta, who like made
infrastructure.
his password was password. I
Yeah,
mean,
but you could easily protect your infrastructure by taking away that router, that gateway into your system, and having a total off the grid network that you could still work on remotely, but you would never, it would never touch the internet itself. Like, it would be a separate interlocked network. Now, that's totally possible, but nobody thinks that far when it comes to the government, because they want, just like, I remember was out in Norway, we were running fiber optics to tons of water plants, and all of them are connected to the internet. uh, you could get in there and stop, anything. You could
well, that
totally
happened
sabotage.
recently in Florida, where I believe like someone was able to get into one of the water supplies and add like other toxic chemicals to the
Yeah.
water. Which, why are they adding? Oh, we're just adding small amounts of fluoride and small amounts of toxic chemicals to the water. Why are they adding any of this at all? But I do want to shift gears right now
Yeah.
and talk about this really great article out of Zero Hedge called "One Bank Goes Apocalyptic." Inflation is about to explode, leaving global economies sitting on a time bomb. And this is
Oh, guess who? Guess who? Who is it?
who is it?
Bang.
So this is Inflation, the defining macro story of the decade, a must-read report written by Deutsche Bank's global head of research, David Folkerts Lando, co-authored by Peter Hopper and Jim Reed. He's got some quotes here. This is from Reagan in 78. Inflation is as violent as a mugger, as frightening as an armed robber, and as deadly as a hitman. Joe Biden from this year. A job is a lot more than a paycheck. It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say everything will be okay. Too many people can't do it, and it's got to change. Come on, man. Not just added that. Come on, man. Janet Yellen from this year. Neither the president elect nor I proposed this relief package without an appreciation for the country's debt burden. But right now, with interest rates at historic lows, the smartest thing we can do is act big. Jerome Powell. During this time of reopening, we are likely to see some upward pressure on prices, but those prices are likely to be as temporary as they are associated with the reopening process. And of course, Larry Summers from this year. I think this is the least responsible macroeconomic policy we've had in the last 40 years. And this guy, Larry Summers, complete scumbag, did a whole thing on him. when I made a video about the Clintons, if you guys want to know more about him. But anyways, the above quotes highlight the U.S. macro policy and indeed the very role of government in the economy is undergoing the biggest shift in direction in 40 years. In turn, we are concerned that it will bring about uncomfortable levels of inflation. It is no exaggeration to say we are departing from neoliberalism, that the days of the new liberal policies that begun in the Reagan era. And yeah, Reagan did double the size of government. So all the conservatives that love him, I mean, doubled the size of government. It made the one that had like the Vaccine Exemption Act in '86. Anyways, I'm digressing. Are clearly fading in the rearview mirror. The effects of this shift are being compounded by political turmoil in the U.S. and deeply worrying geopolitical risk. As we step into the new world, we are no longer sure how much of what we thought we understood about financial and macroeconomics is still valid. Despite the shift in priorities, central banks must still prioritize inflation. Indeed, history has shown that the social cost of significantly higher inflation and greatly expanded debt servicing obligations make it hard, if not impossible, to reach social goals that the U.S. administration, among others, is keen to achieve. We fear that the vulnerable and disadvantaged will be hit first and hardest by mistakes in policy. The foundation for today's paradigm shift was laid last decade after the global financial crisis concerns turned to high and rising levels of sovereign debt. Market fears of peripheral Eurozone countries led governments to preemptively move towards fiscal consolidation before bond market vigilantes could force them. The effect of austerity was worsened as banks and consumers simultaneously tried to repair their balance sheets. Hence, low interest rates and asset purchases continued even as economies were relatively stagnant and inflation stayed low. The pandemic has accelerated this shift in thinking. Sovereign debt has risen to levels unimaginable a decade ago, with large industrial countries exceeding red line levels of 100% of GDP. Yet there is little serious concern about debt sustainability on the horizon from investors, governments, or international institutions. Similarly, on inflation, the vast majority of central banks and economists believe any rise in prices away from historical low levels of debt the last decade will be transitory. It is assumed that baseline effects, one offs, and structural forces will continue to suppress prices. So, two of the biggest historic constraints on macroeconomic policy, inflation and debt sustainability, are increasingly perceived as non binding. In turn, the removal of these constraints has opened the door for new goals for macro policy, which go far beyond simply stabilizing output across the business cycle. This changing approach to macro policy has been formalized in the Federal Reserve's operating procedures, making a broader interpretation of its mandate possible. Unlike in previous eras when it was common practice to preempt inflation overshoots with higher rates, today's Fed said they would want to see actual progress, not just forecast progress. The new average inflation targeting approach only increases its tolerance for inflation. Almost done here. In short, we are witnessing the most important shift in global macro policy since the Rager-Volcker axis 40 years ago. Fiscal injections are now off the charts at the same time as the Fed's modus operandi has shifted to tolerate higher inflation. Never before have we seen such coordinated expansionary fiscal and monetary policy. This will continue as output moves above potential. This is why this time is different for inflation. Even if some of the transitory inflation ebbs away, we believe price growth. In conclusion, we worry that inflation will make a comeback. It's funny how this has come from Deutsche Bank. Few still remember how our societies and economies were threatened by high inflation 50 years ago. The most basic laws of economics, the ones that have stood the test of time for over a millennium, have not been suspended. An explosive growth in debt, financed largely by central banks, is likely to lead to higher inflation. We worry that the painful lessons of an inflationary past are being ignored by central bankers, either because they really believe that this time is different, or they have bought into a new paradigm that low rates are here to stay, or they are protecting their institutions by not trying to hold back a political steamroller. Whatever the reason, we expect inflationary pressures to reemerge as the Fed continues with its policy of patience and its stated belief that current pressures are largely transitory. It may take a year longer until 2023, but inflation will reemerge. And while it is admirable that the patience is due to the fact that the Fed's priorities are shifting towards social goals, neglecting inflation leaves global economies sitting on a time bomb. It is a scary thought that just as inflation is being deprioritized, fiscal and monetary policy is being coordinated in ways the world has never seen. Recent stimulus has been extraordinary, and economic forecasting, which is difficult at the best of times, is becoming harder by the day. Fractured politics amplifies the problem. Needless to say, the range of global outcomes over the years is coming wide. When central banks are eventually forced to act on inflation, they will find themselves in a difficult, if not untenable position. I'd say impossible. They will be fighting the increasingly ingrained perception that high levels of debt and higher inflation are a small price for achieving progressive political, economic, and social goals. That will make it politically difficult for societies to accept higher unemployment in the interest of fighting inflation. Eventually, though, any social priorities that policymakers have will be set aside if inflation returns in earnest. Rising prices will touch everyone. Touch everyone. It sounds like Joe Biden. The effects could be devastating, particularly for the most vulnerable in society. Sadly, when central banks do act at this stage, they'll be forced to abrupt policy change, which will only make it harder for policymakers to achieve the social goals that our societies need. Low, stable inflation and historically low rates have been the glue that have held together macro policy for the last 3 decades. If, as we expect, this starts to unravel over the next year or two, then policymakers will face the most challenging years since the Volcker Reagan period in the 1980s. And I usually don't go on and read a huge article like that, and I did.
Right.
Putting John to sleep over there, but this is such an important article from the standpoint of
Yeah.
it's basically inflation is not going to be a problem until it is a problem. I'd argue it already is a problem, and they're just we have inflation. It's in financial assets that aren't really necessarily counted. They don't count things like food and energy, and they
Real estate cost.
misconstrued. Yeah, the real estate. That's exactly where I was going with that. And what are they going to do to fight inflation? Raise rates? But they couldn't even raise rates past 2.25 the last go around in the greatest economy in the history of the world before they had to cry uncle and start having tens of billions of dollars of bond purchases a month after they were trying to sell bonds. There's no way they can ever put this genie back in the bottle without destroying everything. But the point may be to destroy everything, so in that way you then get people to beg for help in air quotes, and then that help will then come from the form of uh, digital currency, a gov coin that we've covered numerous times in the show before, that will then also come in the form of the gov coin being tied to universal basic income, being tied to different social goals. And if you don't go and get the vaccine, then you're not going to go get your X amount of thousands of dollars per month. And then there's no way they can ever, in the 80s, or sorry, 70s, Volcker was able to raise rates up to like 18%. Today they couldn't raise it to 2. They can't raise it to like 1.5 without everything completely collapsing.
Well,
Uh,
I think we should have a bet on that, Tim. I believe that they might try, to entail that they're going to taper again, and actually try to raise interest rates. Remember last time, what was it, 2.25 or 2.5 that they ended up at before it all collapsed back on them? So I think this time, I think you're right. Like it might be even less, like 1.25 to 1.5 with all the debt that's out there. And what's interesting is what's interesting here I recently actually got approached by the editor of Canadian News at LinkedIn, and asked a question about what do you think about the problems with people going back to jobs, and I was saying, like, people were like, well, they need a living wage and all this stuff. Meanwhile, I was there blaming inflation. I was like, you give people like all this free money and you expect them to come back to work. You scare them to death with the COVID virus, and you expect people to come straight back and like just go back into the workforce. No, they, first of all, they want more money because it's they feel it's risky, and second of all, we can have a living wage that said you could raise it to 25, 30, 40, $50, no matter what you raise it to. Then the rest of the population wants their raises because they are like, well, I need to have like at least a pay raise to get like above their level because I'm clearly more skilled than the other one. And then secondly, the problem here is the inflation of the monetary supply. I tried to make that point, and I was the only one, Tim, out of 8 economists that they asked that were blaming inflation on a lot of this stuff, and people were just like, some people actually got it, but like most people were blaming equality of women in the workforce,
climate
and
change.
all the talking points. I say, like, the ones to blame here is the government, the central banks, and the banks. They are the one created the inflation that have destroyed purchasing power of the regular employees. So now you have to be two people in order to sustain a living, be able to survive. And if you're not, like, I could only imagine, like, me and my wife are fine, but like I could only imagine people that are, two people on minimum wage. Like, that'd be insane. How could they survive today? Two people on minimum wage. Back in the day, like I remember my father-in-law, he had three kids and his wife was at home and he had a living wage. It was fine. That is inflation. It's always inflation that are coming out and destroying the day. And then of course the saviors are going to be the central banks that create the inflation in the first place. These guys are morons. Like, you have the central bankers saying that we got to fix inequality, but you were the morons created in the first place. That's so laughable. But nobody gets it. Not even a damn economist here in Canada. I haven't heard one yet that could come back and actually, point out that it's the banks and the central banks and the government, printing oblivious amounts of currency that are destroying purchasing power for the people, that they are to blame and not the evil corporations. Like, if you're gonna raise salaries for people, you think that that's gonna not go anywhere and cost anything? That's gonna get passed on to everybody. Like, come on. We're going to see a lot of more inflation because we got, the supply chain is severely depleted with a lot of people working according to COVID rules. So you might have, like 2/3 or even a half sometimes of the production that you can get. And so the supply is dismal. And then on top of that, you get a lot of demand, pent up demand, because people have been on moratoriums, they've been traveling. A lot of savings have, stored up in the monetary system. And when that flushes out, it's like almost like it's not similar to the Weimar hyperinflation, but when that velocity comes back in, the inflation that they're talking about, that's the key point. And when the point happens, when people at that time, people on minimum wage can't keep up, and suddenly they can't afford food, you're going to have an Arab Spring on your hands, because when over about 60% of your salary goes to feeding yourself and you can't afford anything else, and you're starting to feel like you almost starve, like it's like the Elvis movement. A lot of people there were talking about this because their currency was so destroyed that they couldn't afford to feed themselves on these salaries. And they could keep on raising interest rate, no, raising minimum wages, but it's like in Venezuela they raised them 5,000, 10,000%, and nothing happened. It just collapsed because trust in the currency is the only one thing that keeps it at bay, Tim. And when that breaks, it's all bets are off, and hyperinflation comes pretty down fast.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out is I just ran off to my closet. Well, no, I want to say I was coming out of my closet, but no, I just came out and ran to my closet real quick to go grab some junk silver. And in 1964, so right now in my hot little hands, I have $1.30 worth of dimes, as you guys can see. So, I mean, I've got
Ooh.
13
No, you
dimes,
don't. It's not a
13
dollar
dimes,
40. Come on, you got a lot
13,
more in there.
13
Tell them
dimes.
the truth, Tim.
Got 13 dimes in my hands, my hot little hands from pre 1964. And so, I'm dropping over here. But what's important to note about this is in 1964, the minimum wage was $1.25. So, how is anyone going to live off $1.25? Well, the silver or the money back then had 90% silver. So I just did a quick calculation here. So $1.30 times 0.9. I know I said $1.25, but I didn't have any
Oh, he has a
nickels.
calculator. Holy smokes.
$1.30 times 0.9, since it was 90% silver, is 1.17 ounces, times the spot price of silver right now of $27.91, means that the $1.30 that's in my hands right now is really worth $32.65 per hour.
Doesn't that
If you
sound
were
more
to,
like it? Like, that's a proper minimum wage.
and
Like,
then
right? Like,
that's
yeah.
not even including like the real spot, like the actual price that you actually buy it from. So I mean, it's probably more like $40 to actually get just $1.30. Now I wonder if it's like legal, if somehow like I could just pay myself in this, be like, oh, I only made like $200 this week, but just pay yourself in like junk
Hey, there you go.
silver.
That'd be
think you
fantastic, Tim.
Like,
Let's try
could
to
that be like
figure
a
something out. There
loophole?
must
Could
be a
that be a loophole?
loophole.
Be like, I'm only paying myself in junk silver, and then
Well, I
I'm
know
not doing that. But
if you go to the store and try and spend that, even if it's like
Yeah.
a gold
That's true.
eagle, legally they give you face value for it, not the melt value. So why couldn't you pay yourself with
Yes,
those
sir.
units.
That's
I'm
an
only paying
ingenious
my I'm
idea,
only
Tim.
paying myself I'm only paying myself minimum wage. No,
Ask for commission in junk silver, and then just like face value. Like
I
just
know.
give
So
me
what?
face
I don't even
value of
know
these coins.
what even is. I mean, they're always like moving the minimum wage, but I mean, here I
Yeah.
think it might be like $11 an hour or something like that. But I mean, you go and you pay yourself, 11. I mean, let's so basically just multiply that number by 10. It'd be like $300 an hour. You know,
Well, in Norway
you're
it's 20
making.
bucks. Like our minimum wage is 20 bucks in Norway, but inflation is through the roof, like in Norway too. So
I was
my
not the
mom is really
happiest.
feeling. My mom is really feeling inflation. She's like getting pay raises, but it's not keeping up with inflation. She's like, I'm getting less and less money every year. My rent is going up. It's eating me alive.
Now, for our listeners,
Real.
I've got a meme on the screen where it's a guy putting on some clown makeup, and first it goes, "There won't be inflation," then it goes, "There is no inflation." He's got a little bit more makeup on. Then he's got the almost most of the clown get up on. It says inflation is transitory, and then he's got the full clown outfit on with the nose and says inflation is good. So I just absolutely
It
love
should
this
say
one.
inflation is hyperinflation or something. Come on.
Yeah. So, and then we've got, I also wanted to point out, a vindicated Rand Paul decimates Fauci over emails. And, basically, Fauci, what makes me so mad about
How'd
this
you
is
delete your emails? Didn't you learn from Clinton? Yeah, that's right, Haley.
no, Clinton didn't delete her emails. Clinton was running a whole separate private server, so they weren't able to subpoena any of her emails to begin with because
Yeah.
she like somehow accidentally, and then was forwarding stuff off to like a
Some of them
Chinese
got
shipping
out, but yeah.
company too. But I mean, essentially, there is a guy. Maybe Arthur can pull up some of this stuff, but there was this guy Peter Drozik or something like that is his name, and he was at this Eco Health Alliance, and Fauci was funding the Eco Health Alliance, and the Eco Health Alliance was funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology to then do gain of function research, where they take, basically these different viruses from animals, soup them up, and make it so that way it could infect humans. And more than likely, that's where, I mean, I know, remember Luke Radowski and I did a video. I mean, one of the videos I
Well, this
found
was
was on.
out in what was it, December, January of like 2019, 2020?
Yeah, I mean, we did a
It came out,
video.
yeah.
I mean, I didn't start making videos with him until March of 2020. Well, we went from March 2020 and ended at like the last day of April in 2020. Very short lived on
Yeah.
that one. But anyways, one of those videos we made in April, it actually was breaking down how this more than likely came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And then, I mean, and it's not about being right. It's about, if you know the track record of these guys, of these criminals, of these,
Yeah, exactly.
intergenerational basically organized crime that's going on over here. I mean, this is not Fauci's first rodeo screwing the public over and being, the yes man to the so-called elite. And so anyways, so Fauci was out there saying, "Oh no, we've never," and he's got, drawl, this,
I think
kind of like
Arthur
a,
found your whatever Peter Drossik emails or something. He sent you something.
oh,
Watch.
he sent me something. Okay,
Yeah,
very
I
cool.
think
So I'll go ahead and take a
they're
look at that.
on single.
I found the guy here. There's some Fox, Baltimore story, NBC News story, Wall Street Journal.
Well, it's hard to find it if you search online. Even with DuckDuckGo, it's like getting buried recently. Like a lot of
Right.
information. There was actually like somebody sent me the
But there was
actual
the
link.
actual email. So
Emails
this
are off.
guy, paraphrasing
Yeah.
here, but this guy had sent an email to Fauci as part of the release. It said, we really appreciate you basically demonizing that one paper that said that it could have came out of Wuhan Institute of Virology, and you're such a
What?
trusted voice,
Peter
and because of
Daszak.
your trusted voice, we really want to thank you for doing that, for being a bold move, because these guys were essentially colluding to get the gain of function research that was banned in America. And then now Fauci is sort of like the firefighter that goes and starts the fire and then tries to put the fire out, except makes the fire worse, but then gets all the credit for being,
Well,
the
look at
most
Peter
noble
Daszak,
person in the
Tim.
world.
Yeah, Peter Daszak was down with the World Health Organization, looking at what was the actual source of the virus. Peter Daszak was on the group itself, going down there and finding out if, did it come from that lab that I funded, or did it come from the wet market?
Yeah, or did it come from the wet market like 600 yards away? I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, oh my God. It says,
Sorry.
stay informed with conservative. Oh my God. Damn it. It won't even let me click off of here unless I say I'm a Democrat. Damn it. Okay. That's yeah, screw you, Tucker Carlson.
That's cute.
Goes blah 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 from my From my perspective, your comments are brave, and coming from your trusted voice will help dispel the myths being spun around the virus's origins. Once this pandemic's over, I look forward to thanking you in person and let you know how important your comments are to us all. Cheers, Peter. And I mean,
Oh, poor
I
Fauci.
mean,
He's Fauci. That
Fauci,
was a big ouchie.
Fauci
Sorry.
has definitely perjured himself, without a
Yeah.
doubt. I mean, to Rand Paul, I mean, the guy
Yeah.
is a complete scumbag to everybody. But anyways, that's just something, wasn't a quick aside that I wanted to talk about. But I mean, it should be, it should be big news, and it shouldn't be something that we just forget. But in terms of other big news that we've got going on,
Nobody's talking about Fauci here in Canada. It's like blacklist. They talk about potential gain of function research and potentially coming out of the Wuhan lab, but the odds are extremely extremely minuscule that that would ever happen. That was their and then they stopped. Nobody asked any more questions. So that's how Canadian news are here. Nobody even knows that Fauci's in trouble right now.
yeah, no, and some of this stuff going on in the Bitcoin world. I mean, we just had the Miami Bitcoin
Yeah.
conference that I know, our friends over at Float were down there. Actually, they were at Shitcoin 2021 to, do a pre-launch of their Float token, which is not out yet, but I know I think it's gonna be out in about a month. And I do own some of that as a, full disclosure. But El Salvador makes Bitcoin legal tender in world's first. It will bring financial inclusion, investment, tourism, innovation, economic development for our
See,
country.
first thing I thought about was tourism. I'm gonna go down to El Salvador.
Yep, and then, I
Yeah.
mean, basically, I mean, I can't find where it says this, but, somewhere in here, I did remember him saying something along the lines of, "Hey, if we just get, a fraction of, the Bitcoin money, then it'll increase our GDP by 25%."
I think somebody posted that on our Discord, by the way, somewhere.
Yeah, and then we've got, we got corporate Bitcoin investments. Why are multi-billion-dollar companies suddenly rushing to Bitcoin? And John, do you want to tell us why they're rushing to Bitcoin? This is one of the articles that you had.
Oh, just one thing before I found the quote here by Nayib Bukele. It says Bitcoin has a market cap of $680 billion. If 1% of this is invested in El Salvador, that would increase our GDP by 25%. On the other side, Bitcoin will have 10 million potential new users and the fast growing way to transfer $6 billion a year in remittances.
Yeah, I think it was Jack Mallers that drew attention to this at Bitcoin 2021. And that was a big thing, was the remittance. I thought they said there was like 2 million El Salvador citizens living in the US that potentially would want to send money back home. And this, using Bitcoin, would be a cheaper, more frictionless way than using something like Western Union.
Yeah, and being on the topic actually of El Salvador is the only country in South America that never closed down ever. A friend of mine, he's a painter that I know, and he's from El Salvador. He told me that some friends of his showed a big street party of 4,000 people down there, and nobody's dying in the streets down there. It's very interesting. But yeah, El Salvador is a hidden gem, by the way. He said to me like, if you're expat, like you should definitely like take a look at maybe like even getting a place down there, because he said there's a lot of bad rep about El Salvador, but we're actually like trying to have like we have very good freedoms down there. We can carry whatever guns we want, and it's a lot more free than you think. He said another thing too. They talk about the Iran Contra. His grandpa was actually sent to the United States and trained by the CIA to then come back and fight, by the way. So that kind of like that was a direct connection that you don't hear often, by the way. That the Contras were there to fight off the current regime on CIA's behalf.
Yeah, and sticking with that Miami Bitcoin conference, I encourage everyone to listen to the speech that Ross Ulbricht gave there. I'm not sure if you guys had listened to that or not. If you just type in Ross Ulbricht
Yeah.
Miami on YouTube, you can find that. And it was a very powerful speech. I mean, he was very, basically apologetic to what he was did, and was basically talking about the naivety of, everything that he did in early days of wanting to basically save the world. And And I'm not sure if you guys know this or not, but I did speak with his mother, Lynn, and she said, told me yesterday that he is now in the shoe for that. So he's in solitary confinement for making. I'm not sure how long he's going to be there, but he is in solitary for making that making that phone call. And personally, I don't think anything he said was really that bad. I mean, he didn't have like some hardcore anarchist type perspective from there. I mean, he was, giving a lot of honest feedback of what was going on and saying how he even forgave the people that did this to him.
How
And
do you dare to say that, you piece of shit? Go back to prison
and,
and
that, and
starve and
then he
die.
was also
Dumbass.
just talking about how he needs to be thankful for everything. And first he was thankful for like the stale air that he gets to breathe and some of the water that he gets to drink and just the fact that he's alive, but how it's basically so awful what they are doing to him, and this person that was a first time nonviolent offender who basically was using the powers of Bitcoin to help uh decentralize the world. And so for doing that, he got double life plus 40 years. And for anyone that thinks this guy's a monster, I would really implore you guys to again, I mean, I hate directing anyone to YouTube, but go to Ross Ulbricht, Miami. You can find that speech. It's only about 24 minutes long. And unfortunately for making that, he is in solitary. But it's the thing is, and the other big part of the speech was talking about freedoms. And and basically right now Ross is not free, obviously, but we're all not going to be free if it wasn't for people like Ross standing up for this, and people like us standing up for this as well. And and once they institute the digital dollar, once they completely have us by the balls, we're not going to, no one's going to be free, because they're going to completely do whatever they need to do to socially engineer us in order to bring about this you know I mean, call it new world order, call it whatever you want, this whatever new regime that's going forward. But it's not going to be pretty what they have planned for us. And a lot of this has to do with central banking. A lot of this has to do with all the things that we talk about here on a whatever basis of videos when we put them out on frequency. And mainly that's my fault for being a little bit too busy over here, and also trying to detach from the news cycle. But moving on here. So John, so what can you tell us about the multi-billion-dollar companies rushing to Bitcoin article that you'd sent over?
Yeah, no, institutional money are piling into Bitcoin. A lot of them are buying Coinbase, of course. But there's, what you got to remember, the Coinbase actually have 8,000 institutional clients. So they actually have that's a lot of corporations that have a account at Coinbase that potentially are doing custody or whatever. You don't see a lot of talk about the corporate holdings. There's not too many corporations, or but they, let's see here, they invested through December. Uh, like there is yeah, no, they're talking about Coinbase here, but it holds about 100 and no, sorry, now Coinbase is worth 122 billion. It was around
Are we on the
45.
same
Yeah.
article? Are we on the same article? Corporate
No,
Bitcoin
sorry,
investment.
I looked up another one to get a different point of view, but it's I couldn't find too much on like how much is getting purchased by corporates. But again, like the move by El Salvador is, I don't know if anybody understands how massive that is to actually make something legal tender. Gold is not even legal tender in most states in the United States. Like it's only a few states that it's actually legal to use gold as a medium of exchange for payments. So this is like El Salvador doing that is, I don't understand. I don't think people understand how massive that announcement is. I hate legal tender laws, but the announcement of a government saying that you can now legally use Bitcoin to transact as much as you want, that is pretty substantial. And they're not a tiny little country either. El Salvador has enough people. Uh,
And of course, we've got Kathy Wood here saying that basically if the S&P 500 corporations were just to put 10% of their balance sheet, I wouldn't say just 10%, but of their balance sheet, then that would add another $400,000 to the price of Bitcoin. And then we do
Yeah, so
have
they're bigger than, like, they're bigger than they're bigger than Norway. So 6.48 million people. By the way, sorry. Go ahead,
and
Tim.
then we've got Michael Saylor over here, who's Max Kaiser called him the high priest of Bitcoin. And and one of the things I've heard Michael say is, asset inflation is running 10 to 25% annually, is evidenced by sharp increases in the price of stocks, real estate, commodities, according to him. And basically, he said that his company's cash reserves were a melting ice cube because fiat currency is slowly but surely losing its purchasing power. Bitcoin offers a solution, being a finite asset with only 21 million BTC to ever be mined into existence. And here is a picture of him with the laser eyes, which is meant to signal the intent on making Bitcoin an instrument of economic empowerment around the world. And and then this also, but this story then ties into inflation, because the average person doesn't really have any ways to really fight against inflation unless they own a home. And then you're paying more property tax as
Yeah,
the
so
asset
he's
goes up, and
replaced.
they
Yeah,
call
yeah,
that
he's
bracket creep.
replacing Bitcoin with cash basically on his balance sheet. That's what he's doing, right? Like
Yeah.
he knows what inflation does to the currency supply, and so he's trying to protect himself. It's very simple, and I think a lot will come, but everybody's afraid of getting vilified by the government and coming after by the government, right? So I think there might be a lot of accumulation that are happening behind the scenes. Not a lot of talk about it, right? Uh, I did think that a central bank would soon buy. Oh, actually, by the way, Nigeria turned around the 360 on their ban of Bitcoin, so now it's legal again. So Bitcoin actually is legal to use again in Nigeria. It wasn't before. So again and again, they tried to ban it, but then they find out how stupid of an idea that is, and that doesn't ever work. And I think they need to just get the understanding that they need to work with Bitcoin instead of actually like working against it, because decentralized system, you can't control, you can't stop it. It's like trying to ban BitTorrent. That never has happened. It's live and well now. And that will happen with Bitcoin as well. Like it's a way of transferring value and storing value for people on a global scale, like that have never ever happened in history. It's always been blockades, by regulation and by governments and by the banking system. Their system. We've always been stuck in their enslavement system, but now we're free. We invented cryptocurrencies that are decentralized, Bitcoin, and a whole wide array of other ones, some great privacy coins as well. This is going to be so revolutionary that people don't understand, like 5 to 10 years down the road when the fiat collapses, because with all this government spending that we're seeing around now, like here in Canada, we're still in lockdowns. We like it's like murdered the economy here in Canada, and they expect like everything to come back. And well, no, it's not. Like you totally devastated the economy. Like Klaus Schwab would be very proud of guys like Brian Pallister here and Rob Ford, all these premiers of these provinces, for totally destroying small businesses and giving the big businesses a massive advantage, because the big businesses on the World Economic Forum side, they want that total control grid. They want the digital currency, central bank digital currencies. They want to have everybody enslaved and their customers. They don't want competition. So I think like the only way out of enslavement is going with cryptocurrencies and using it as a medium of exchange and getting off the grid of the monetary enslavement grid that is fiat currencies.
Yeah, and so I mean, kind of like shifting gears, but it's still really not really shifting gears too much. But getting into the inflation side of things, we've got China has just reporting like record numbers of inflation over there, the highest producer inflation in over 12 years, highlights global price pressures, and yeah, their price producer index is at 9, and that's even with whatever rig numbers that
And
they're using over there.
it's trickling into the economy. I'm seeing copper prices. I work with copper wire a lot. Tons of copper wire prices. Our building side, our commercial building company, they have like prices have gone up like over 1,000% here in Canada for a lot of their lumber that they're looking
Yeah,
at. Pressure
lumber.
treated wood is like near impossible to get by. And you're seeing inflation in the stores. I seen here in Canada, I seen inflation has jumped probably like
And
5%
a lot of
on a lot of
shortages of goods,
groceries.
a
Like,
lot of shortages.
yeah,
I mean, China now, I heard they're going to have
oh,
different
big time.
price controls, and the price controls are just going to lead to shortages. I mean, I recently
Yeah.
had mentioned I bought an RV, and a lot of the different parts, like you go on and try to find different like leveling blocks, all sold out from Amazon. Try to buy, I lost a spring bar last week. those are sold out everywhere in like a month or two delay. A lot of the components of different things, because there's so many people looking to get into that and buying, different types of hard assets that, just, and I'm sure people that are into computers, different chip shortages going on over there.
This was the
And
shortages that Klaus warned us about, Tim. We should bow down
well,
to.
you own nothing because it will have price controls and
Yeah.
everything will be gone. So that's why you're going to own nothing. But market bull lists inflation as top risk, warns investors may get a wake up call this summer. And so who is this guy? I think it's Federated Hermes, Phil Orlando. Investors may get a wake up call. And yeah, they're going to get a wake up call because I mean, funny, a wake up call. And we've got labor shortages going on. I think I saw an article yesterday from Zero Hedge that actually talked about how they couldn't even find like strippers, and they actually had a sign from like Little Darlings in Vegas where it said, stripper shortage, now now
Oh, you
interviewing
see it everywhere, Tim.
now
Like
it
here,
said
dude,
now
all the
interviewing.
stores.
Hey,
Yeah.
cut me off right before the punchline. It's saying now interviewing ugly girls, because it was for, so there you go. Cut me off right before the,
You're gonna get yourself banned now from YouTube, Tim. Come
I'm
on.
gonna get myself canceled. So there goes, the 3 different women that watch us here have just offended all
Yeah,
of them.
no, but anyways, like you see that everywhere actually, Tim. Like everywhere in Manitoba too, there's lots of shortages. Like even we're running on 10% of our labor right now of allowed, occupation in the businesses. So people that can go into the businesses running on 10%, and we still have signs up everywhere of people looking for labor because everybody's on those programs. It's like I was talking about being approached by LinkedIn. Nobody was on the other side understanding that there's all this inflation and that the shutdowns of the economy and the government is to blame for everything. But yeah, no, it's good times. Everybody's getting free money from the government here in Canada. They got rid of the big program, but now they have a lesser program that it's not too far away from minimum wage. So people are like, hey, you know what? I'll rather stay at home. I got I got moratoriums on my mortgages and all my debt. I'm not paying any of that, so I'm storing that up. And it's pretty good times right now for the next while until the government chooses not to do it, but I don't think they ever will. And so we're just heading for, like, this is basically like the UBI in all kinds of forums around the world right now, where you see that's one of the major reasons for the labor shortage. Like all this free currency that have been given to people, and nobody's traveling, so everybody got a lot more money to spend because they're locked up in their homes, and so it's a lot easier. Like that's just the way the world works, Tim, isn't it?
Yes, and we've got proof that global inflation is surging. Another article out of FEE. So what's that? The Foundation for Economic. I forgot what the other E stands for. But anyways, it's, pretty reputable. It says right up top, Foundation for Economic Education, and yeah, basically, I mean, the article is going on to say that we've got more and more inflation that's coming. Oh, there's some guy that's I think I've actually met this guy before. Okay. So we've got gas is going to $5 a gallon. So, great
Yeah.
time for me to buy my first, really large SUV. Filling that up today for like $80. But and then you also, I mean, a
Hey,
lot of
$5 a gallon is nothing. Go to Norway, you'll pay like three. It would be like, let's see now, $12 a gallon in Norway.
yeah. Now, is that because of different taxes they have levied on there, or
Oh yeah, of course. They have like an insane amount of taxes on it. Norway has like 85% taxes on their gas.
yeah? So we've got, obviously California is already, going to $5. I think it was 319 here in Arizona.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting, Tim? One point that I want to point out is like all these heavily populated areas, because all this currency is gathering in those areas, inflation gets a lot higher in cities and towns because all the money floods, like currency floods into those local communities, isn't it? Like I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean things. I mean,
On
some
top
of
of
the
taxation.
yeah, some of the other things that when one of the other big themes that we didn't talk about is the Fed now is pretending that they can start winding down their secondary corporate credit bailout fund. And of course, one of the biggest, probably recipients of that fund was going to be BlackRock, because BlackRock was the one that was, taking junk bonds and moving it off their balance sheet onto the Fed's,
Oh,
directly
breaking
buying up
news!
ETFs. And
Breaking news, Tim.
okay, what?
Sorry to interrupt. So, okay, so shit is really starting to happen. You know, we talked about the repo rates. I just remembered I needed to look up the repo, the reverse repos that are going on, and they just broke $500 billion in the reverse repos, Tim. And if we go to my stats over here, let's see now, where's my stats here? They're right here. You got the Federal Reserve reverse repos, and just to like show people the reverse repos back in March when we really had that big collapse in 2020, right, Tim? They were at the peak 284.90 billion. Well, now they've gotten to, they were 497 yesterday, but now they're 502.9. So that's the breaking news, actually, that the
First
Federal
time ever.
Reserve's repos had just broken 500 billion. There's starting to get a lot of talk about it online with a lot of economists that I follow, and it just broke 500. And now there were an insane amount of participants too. Let's see here, there were 59, so it's actually a record of participants as well, because the highest ever participants, no, sorry, the not a record, but a record for so far to this time, because the record was 54, but now it's at 59 today. So more banks and funds are tapping into reverse repo program, Tim.
Yeah,
Sorry to
now they're
interrupt
talking
you.
about basically cutting out, the whole primary dealers and basically just having the Fed be the ones who, issue all the debt, to begin with, and cut out the middleman. And getting back to this corporate credit facility, BlackRock was the one that were sort of the middleman in all this, acting as the broker. But BlackRock
Yeah.
now just wants to come out and talk about how woke they are and how they got these huge, ESG, funds, because everything now has to be environmentally sustainable. But these
Yeah, it
guys
comes from the UN.
give two shits about being environmentally sustainable. It's all about if we can do optics, because even different types of like lithium. And this past weekend, I mean, I was off grid where I had between me and my family had 30 gallons of water that I had for the entire basically 4 or 5 days I was gone. Had solar power, and I was using a little bit of generator, but it wasn't even that much. I mean, it probably went to like 3 or 4 gallons. And when I talk about sustainability, I mean, I was being a lot more sustainable than half these liberals out here, fake liberals that wanted to be, no, probably way more than half. I'm sure how many other people only went to 30 gallons of water through 4 people. I mean, I bet not very many. I'm sure probably not Elon Musk with his stupid fucking rocket company that's like, oh, we want to be, we can't use Bitcoin because it's bad for the environment, and then I'm going to be launching rockets and blanketing the Earth and Starlink, satellites that I'm sure will have some sort of environmental cost to doing, putting rockets up in the air. But yeah, I mean, getting back to Larry Fink, it's all about. And that was actually one of the theories I had, was that Larry Fink, gave a phone call to Elon, was like, hey, we need you to go, quit all of your, propping up of Bitcoin because it's messing with the traditional financial system. Now that's my only, speculation. I don't know that happened, but when you've got $9 trillion that you manage, Larry Fink obviously, carries around,
Or
wields.
Jamie might have been mad too.
Yeah, he wields a lot of power. And so,
Yeah.
and if it wasn't for the Fed coming in and buying up, personally, I think the coronavirus, the whole thing was there to basically have a bailout for
I think so,
both
yeah.
the
I totally
sovereign
agree.
debts. John and I have been reporting on the repo markets blowing up, going back to September 17th, 2018 or 2018, I believe. Then it's whether it was the first time the Fed tried to sell $50 billion of bonds a month, which was October of 2018. They had to reverse course on that within 2 months and start actually, buying up bonds again instead of selling them. And then this was the excuse, but nobody cares. I mean, Trump didn't give a shit. All of Trump's voters didn't give a shit. I mean, because now we're in a pandemic and we can do whatever we want to do. We can not let a crisis go to waste, as Rahm Emanuel would say. And it's really disgusting what they've been able to get away with. And absent, this basically this bank robbery that occurred the past year, we probably would see, maybe a S&P 500 that was down 70%. And speaking of the S&P, we've got like the PE ratios on that is coming in somewhere around like 44 last time I checked, when historically the average is closer to like 15 to 16, meaning that basically you could have the S&P getting cut down by 2/3, and you'd still end up having, at that point, like a fairly valued S&P. Now I'm trying to pull up those numbers right now as I talk. And so, what I say, 45, it was, 44.96. So, I mean, there you go. I mean, how many other times in history has it even been this high? I mean, even in 1929, it wasn't even this high. I mean, basically, you got to go to, the depths of the crash of, March, April, May of 2009, when companies weren't even earning any money. So, if you're not earning any money, then, the E portion of that is going to be, basically, to infinity. And so aside from that, I mean, .com bubble, I mean, just eyeballing this, I mean, we're
Yeah, we
basically
just
like
passed the dot com.
we're like one notch higher than the .com look like, just eyeballing it like a 43, 44. Right now we're at 44.96. But if your denominator is in dollars and those dollars are losing value, then that's something that is very hard to model in how this is going to shake out. But in any and I've seen other articles too where, they have all the major banks driving all these different different stress test ratios and historical valuation models that they use, and a lot of them are showing that now is like one of the most overvalued markets of all time. And so either these companies, and then what's going to happen when, okay, well, now companies need to sell products of stuff that they don't even have because there's shortages everywhere, and then people can't even don't even want to go to work because they have at least till September of not even having to work, with getting all the different, UBI and unemployment. But what was that you were pulling up, John?
No, that was the repo rate. So like what you saw there was the actual reverse repo interventions. And as you can see, like if you want to, I could pull it back up again. Just 1 second here.
Yeah, we've got
Uh,
job openings are soaring to all-time highs. 9.3 million is basically is a record amount of people quit their jobs. So there's 9.3 million job openings right now, which is so crazy when you think about, what really just transpired the past year. And people are like, oh, the people that are graduating in this economy have the worst, worst time of it ever. Well, I'd argue that, when I graduated in 2008, it was actually worse than what's going on now, because, at least now, 2008, they weren't paying you to stay home to not work, and there weren't jobs aplenty. Whereas now there's jobs aplenty,
Yeah.
but you don't have to get a job because you can just stay home and not get paid. So, uh, so things are, absolute craziness. And all right, what you got for us, John?
Yeah, so this is here, like as you can see, this is the reverse repo. So the red is the participants, but let's take away that. And as you can see here, this just passed over, like yesterday it was 497, and now it's 500. And here's the blip of the March crisis. Remember, me and Tim did a lot of reporting around that time, talking about the crisis back in 2020. And as you can see, it becomes very small and insignificant. And I wonder how high it will go this time, Tim, on the reverse repo here. It's going to be very interesting to watch before things start cracking. There's a lot of, like, when you watch the markets, there's a lot of like flattening of the curves right now, a lot of uncertainty. So you never know where this is
Did you
gonna.
say flatten the curve?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a 15-day curve flattening, or
Well, we got the Fed is gonna try to flatten their exponential curve that they created of their balance sheet. It looked like what happened last time they tried to flatten it down. Tim, went from what was it, 4.7 to 4.4 trillion, and then skyrocketed. Now it's close to 8 trillion. And yeah, they just have no understanding. But I do think what you said, though, that this whole COVID thing is basically covered, because what was interesting, the first discovered COVID case in Wuhan was on September 17th, 2019, Tim. And that's exactly the same time the repo crisis started. With the first repo intervention, I remember back in 2017, and that of course trickled and went into the March, so-called lockdown. But then I believe, like, it was a perfect way to bail out the big corporations, as we said again, and just take away, and destroy small businesses, and then make more people slave to the big control grid.
Yeah, and then we've got, speaking of, the first cases of COVID, you've got, China that's basically now coming out and threatening nuclear war if anyone, dare ask, where the origin story of COVID came. I saw there's other articles where they're saying that, the US, blaming
Yeah.
China for COVID is, equivalent to all the, WMDs in Iraq. But they're certainly going to be using this to get whatever they want to get done, and what they want to get done is the complete enslavement of humanity. And then we have central banks, also saying like, oh, we should have climate change as part of our, one of the planks and mandates that they have. And it seemed like Jerome Powell was pushing back on that. You've got global taxes now, so it sounds like they want to have at least some sort of like
Well,
15%.
they're trying. Good luck with like that ever working. Like they're just it's
And
like
then I saw that they were going to like maybe exempt Amazon from that. So, and then we got Jeff Bezos also. I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but Jeff Bezos now is going to be going into Blue Origin. Going to be on like their first rocket, orbital launch, up in space. And then Sir Richard Branson to not
he might be
be out.
blown up.
Yeah, well then to not be outdone by Bezos. Now Richard Branson goes, no, I want to be the first.
But it's Elon. Elon, come on.
Oh no!
Come on,
So
Elon.
now, well, so
Get
now
up there.
so Elon wants to wait till another like a bunch of test dummies are out there first before he straps up into something like that. But now Richard Branson's like, okay, you're gonna do yours on July 20th. Well, maybe we'll do ours on July 4th. And so now he's trying to ramp up his
It's the modern
time.
day space race, isn't it?
I
Yeah,
heard
so
there's
these
another
different
space race
billionaires.
going
Private,
on right
yeah.
now, too. Was it Elon and BitMEX are in a space race to put the first cryptocurrency on the moon or something? They want to establish some sort of crypto infrastructure outside of the Earth, and BitMEX.
So that way Bitcoin can literally go to the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's their plan.
Maybe they should have some sort of like ICO for that, where they can, fund rockets going to space on an ICO. And
Well,
I'm half kidding on that, but
the article was it was they interjected all this climate stuff. They were saying like, oh, the reason why we're doing this is because there may be harsh policies on crypto mining where it'll be too bad for the environment to mine on Earth, so we're preemptively creating crypto infrastructure outside of the planet so we can still mine after we push all of our environmental bullshit on you, is like what they're setting up for.
yeah, and then I mean, and they're talking about what, like some like $3 trillion global. Let's see, the IEA outlines 3 trillion green recovery plan for world leaders to help fix the global economy. So this is all about sustainability. And thing is, like these guys like Larry Fink, they just want these like big handouts of, oh, you're gonna, we've got this fund, and then you've got trillions of dollars that you can print out of thin air, and then we'll have our fund find a way to make like 1 to 2%, fees off your trillions of dollars, and then it's all this free money. And so I don't think for 1 second that these guys actually care about sustainability. I mean, the whole electric car thing isn't really even that sustainable. From take a look at how you get lithium ion batteries, the lifespan of those
Yeah, and
batteries.
how about getting rid of them first of all and recycling them back again? Like nobody, it doesn't seem like a lot of people have thought about like, okay, in about 10, 15
Like the
years from
entire
now, we're
life
gonna have a
cycle.
fucking shitload of batteries.
Yeah,
Like
but
everywhere.
windmill, when the wings on windmills, that's supposed to be this big revolutionary green energy thing. Them wings have to get replaced all the time, and then they have to go to they have to be disposed of, and they're just being piled up
And then don't
somewhere.
they need like oil for the wings, or some sort of like lubricant or something that they
Of
like,
course,
if
yeah,
there's
you
some sort
have
of
to.
oil in the middle that they,
Oh, what is it? No, they use so many gallons of helicopter fuel to defrost the wings of a green energy windmill because
yeah.
they put them up in a cold
And
climate.
then
They
all
got
the birds, all the birds that die. And then even there's this huge, and this is crazy. So Josh and I were driving by this when we were supposed to be going to Jerry Griffin's, but when we were coming back, and out in, it's like right in the Nevada, California border
That's
somewhere.
Google, yeah, Google solar plants, right?
There's this huge, it's like one of the world's largest like solar fields, but then they have like these like crystal things that come up from it, where they've got like, all these solar panels that then refract into this like gigantic crystal that has some other, and it's
Yeah,
so crazy.
they heat up the salt in the tower, and then
And
actually that runs a turbine. That's what
and
that
then
like involves.
that
Yeah.
and then
the
that apparently is like this like holocaust of birds that die from this thing, where they like fly in the middle of this and get like
It's like
instantly like incinerated. Razor dog walks right. Teddy walks right in the background of that. Sorry, Teddy, we're not talking about incinerating you. I forgot what this thing was called. So if you guys want to go on and talk about something, I'm gonna go find this picture. It's like solar power,
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. They actually had the
Nevada.
first one was in Spain, by the way, the first one of those towers. It basically uses the extreme amount of hot energy that these solar reflectors create on the tower. Then it actually runs a turbine inside. Like I think there's like a what do you call some salt sludge or something that heats up and then like it starts to turn into gas and then like basically runs fast through this turbine. And I think that's how they generate the energy with those solar towers. I forgot what it's actually called now though.
It's
Yeah,
a
here's 300,000 of these computer controlled mirrors. Oh, they're mirrors.
Yeah.
Each about 7 feet high, 10 feet wide. They reflect sunlight to boilers that sit on a 459-foot tower. The sun's power is used to heat the water in the boilers, tubes, and make steam, which in turn drives
Yeah.
turbines to create electric.
Yeah.
And this
See
is
how much I
Prim.
know. I'm pretty impressed by myself here.
See, it can produce 400 megawatts, enough power for 140,000 homes. It began making electricity last year, but this was 2014 picture. So yeah, so this thing like driving by and like not knowing that I was going by this thing, and all of a sudden you're like looking out and you're like, what the hell is that? But like these crazy like crystals. Actually, here's a better picture of it for I always want to say readers because of Cash Daddies, but so here's here's another picture
Yeah,
of
there we
this
go.
right
Yeah.
here, and it's
And
just
you can see it's just crazy bright. I talked to Kingsley, was it, when we drove by them last time, and he said that some days it's so bright that you can't almost see, like when you drive on the road because of those towers, apparently.
Well, it's definitely like an eye catcher. I mean, you look at that thing,
Yeah.
you're like, holy crap, look at all the stuff that's going on. But I don't know. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add? Because I've got a meeting that starts in 10
Well,
minutes, so I gotta.
I got just one thing talking about,
I was hoping you were gonna say no,
sustainability.
but okay, no.
Yeah, sustainability. You got battle brews over banning natural gas to homes. So of course, California is trying to do this. There's lots of cities. Here in Manitoba, for example, all our heating, 95% of the heating, I dare to say, is natural gas. So that would work pretty good in a place where there's minus 45 in wintertime in the Celsius. To just ban the number one heat source. Yeah, that works pretty good. Let's just get rid of all these fossil fuels and everything that actually runs our car. If you ban all this stuff, like nobody's thought about like, okay, how are we going to replace it with more sustainable things? Like they're banning plastic bags. It's hilarious. Go to the store,
Let's
banning
ban
plastic
plastic
bags.
bags
So
and
I go and
then make 20
paper
billion fucking
bags.
masks for everybody to wear. Oh, we're
No,
gonna
and then
ban we're gonna
paper
ban
bags.
straws in California, but don't worry because we're gonna replace all the straws that were
Well, it's
polluting
paper
the ocean
straws,
with a
but they're
million.
cutting down trees. They're cutting down trees to make those paper straws and paper bags. Like, how fucking stupid can you be? Like, talking about
I
sustainability,
remember like, the
cutting
first
down
time
the
I went to
only
a
thing that
restaurant.
actually takes CO2 out of the atmosphere. Sorry, Tim.
I remember the first time I went to a restaurant in California, and it was like a nicer place, and all of a sudden, I get a straw, and it's like basically like disintegrating in my mouth. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where you go with things. But I do have to, as Sam would say, I got a jam here. So I appreciate Arthur Diamond Hands being here and for everything he does for the show. Appreciate John Snyson. You guys can find him at theeconomictruth.org. You can find Arthur Diamond Hands on Float, also on the Discord as well. You can find John there as well. And then me, you can find me temporarily right now at thelibertyadvisor.com. And anything else you guys want to add in parting as we wrap up show number 41?
No, I think we talked about the most important things, and I think we're just in for a lot more craziness. Like, just wait. Like, we got our COVID passports here in Manitoba coming slowly, and then they're gonna give us
Yeah, I
access to
see they're going
seeing
to
our old people and all that stuff.
open up the border maybe on the 22nd of June for vaccinated people can now get into Canada. So that's
Yeah. So, like, first thing I said, how can I get my fake vaccinated passport
Please
right now?
go on YouTube underneath a comment and put your email and home address so that way the
Anyways,
Canadian Mounties can come to your house and arrest you. With John saying this publicly, but
Canadian thugs, you thugs, get out of here! Don't show up
is
my door.
that them knocking on your door right now? A little is that the boot?
I got
coming
guard
in there?
dogs. Haven't you seen, like, Teddy? He's a big boy, like he's pretty vicious. So
Your
you don't want to come to my house.
Your combined weight of like 35 pounds of guard dogs. I'm not sure how much. Those little ankle
I got
biters are.
Haley is 55, so she's pretty good, but the other ones are like 10 pounds, so they can pack a punch per pound though. They got a pretty good biting jaw. I've been bitten many times by a little boy.
Yep. Anyways, no, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This was obviously a jam-packed episode of lots of different things to talk about. You guys can find us on where you can find us. Find us on BitChute, find us on Library/Odyssey, find us on obviously the podcast download. We're super close to getting 3,000 YouTube subscribers. Might already be there. I think we only need like 30. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, listening, please just hit the subscribe button. We're almost at 3,000, but even better yet, find us on the alternative platforms. Subscribe to the email list. Subscribe to us on the podcast, and we are out of here. So thank you guys very much for being part of the show and for listening, and see you guys later.
Arrivederci.